Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. I'm Maggie Benson. We're here on Smithsonian Science How exploring butterflies. When was the last time you saw a butterfly? And what did you do when you saw it? If you were like me, you probably got really close to take a look at them because they're so beautiful and interesting. And a lot of that has to do with their colors. And today we're going to be exploring butterfly coloration and how butterflies come by their colors. And to help us do that, we have two special guests. Our first special guest is Eric Wenzel, manager of the Butterfly Pavilion, who's going to help us understand the adaptations that butterfly coloration serve. And our second guest, who we'll speak to after Eric, is Juan Pablo Hurtado Padilla, who will help us understand how butterflies produce their colors by taking a really close look at their wing structures with microscopy. But before we get started and we introduce Eric, I want to remind all of our viewers that you can submit questions to us during our live shows today, and we'll take as many questions as we can. We know that we have the Winthrop School with us, we see you Front Royal Homeschool, and we can't wait to take some of your questions. So Eric, thank you so much for being here today with us, exploring butterfly coloration. Now you have a totally awesome job. You work in the Butterfly Pavilion and get to see butterflies every day.
That's right. I've been working with butterflies here in the museum for about 10 years now. Insects have always been an interest of mine, so this is a match made in heaven, I guess.
Now, help us understand the main function behind coloration. What function does color serve in both butterflies and animals?
You can think of it as an adaptation to either blend into your environment or to stand out.
So we have two things: blending in, camouflage, or standing out, showing off. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of wonderful examples here to walk us through that concept. And let's start with a butterfly that we're all familiar with. And Joseph, I see, he wants to know more about the Monarch. Mm-hmm. Let's start there.
Okay. As I'm sure that many of our viewers today are familiar with the Monarch, it's a common resident of North America. It's notable for having that very bold orange and black pattern. And that actually serves as a warning to potential predators that it would not be a good idea to eat them because they do indeed contain toxins.
What would happen if a predator ate it?
Well, hopefully it would be able to throw it up first, and if it didn't, it may actually develop heart problems. Because what they do, as a caterpillar, they eat the leaves of the milkweed plant. And those contain what are known as cardiotoxins, and they store those up in their body for the rest of their lives.
And so this warning coloration, this is part of that family of colors that show off.
Yes, they are definitely showing off. They have nothing to fear.
Now, right next to it, we have a butterfly that's very closely colored and patterned, the Viceroy. Is that also poisonous?
Originally, we thought that it wasn't, but now we know that it does contain its own type of toxin. What we have here is a case of two butterflies mimicking each other for dual protection.
So can a predator tell the difference between a Viceroy and a Monarch? Not
reliably, as a matter of fact. It is somewhat difficult to tell the difference between the two.
Now, I'm sure that you know how to tell the difference, being an expert in butterflies, but I think it's a great opportunity to check in with our audience and see if they can spot the difference between a Viceroy and a Monarch.
Let's try.
So viewers, here's an opportunity to participate in a live poll with us. Take a look at the picture that is coming up on your screen and tell us how many of these butterflies are monarchs.
This is a monarch and this is a viceroy. As you can see, one is smaller and one is larger. So the viceroy looks exactly like our monarch, but it is way smaller, and then this is our monarch. Our other second physical difference is the hind wings, which are our two bottom wings on each butterfly. They look like similar patterns, but our viceroy actually has a lateral line going straight through on both sides of the hind wing, where our monarch does not. And once it closes its wings as well, if you guys can see, they have a lateral line as well, so you can see it from the front and the back side.
So here is the answer key. It looks like only one of these butterflies are monarchs.
And three viceroys.
And so can you show us on your specimens here, can you reiterate how to tell the difference?
Absolutely. The key difference between the two is this lateral line on the hind wing of the viceroy. Look for that. The monarch does not have that and never will. That is the key difference right there, that lateral line.
Very cool. So we actually have another student question right now, but this one comes in by video, so let's have a look.
Let's take a look.
My name is Adam, and I was wondering why the butterflies have different colors.
There are a great number of reasons why they do. We've just pointed out one here to warn predators that they're toxic and they shouldn't be eaten, but they are also used for species identification and to blend in their environment in camouflage.
Now, is warning coloration something similar that is something that other animals in the animal kingdom have?
Yes, there are many examples in the animal kingdom of warning coloration, and we're going to show you a few right here. That is a yellow jacket, a type of wasp, poison arrow frog, a salamander, and a millipede. And the thing that all of these different animals have in common is they are brightly colored to warn potential predators that they are dangerous.
Now, you showed us a wasp in that, and that wasp is actually venomous. Can you?
That is an important difference between the two. Some people use the terminology as the same, venomous versus poisonous, but a venomous animal like the wasp actively injects the poison into their victim, whereas in the case of poisonous animals like the other three and our butterflies here, you would have to eat them in order to have the harm happen.
Now, I want to bring us back to a different butterfly specimen that I saw when I was in the butterfly pavilion with you a couple weeks ago, which is the blue Morpho. Now, the blue Morpho has this fabulous blue iridescent color on the back of its wings, as we can see a picture of it right here. Now, that bright blue color, is that warning coloration like we see in our Viceroy and our Monarch?
Yeah, this is about everybody's favorite. When they visit the pavilion, they love to see the blue Morpho butterfly. But something different is going on here. In the case of the Morpho, it spends most of its time when at rest with its wings tightly closed like this. And that exposes the dark, dull brown coloration, which is good camouflage if you happen to be in a tree. It's only when they detect that a predator is stalking them will they flash that brilliant blue color.
Very cool. So if we look at this specimen again, it's almost like it's two different butterflies, but it is in fact the same. When those wings are closed, you have that dull brown, and when they're open, you have that bright blue color. So they're really doing both of the color adaptations that you mentioned.
They are.
They're hiding and they're showing off.
And that's called flash coloration.
And we actually have another video from one of our butterfly pavilion experts to help us see flash coloration in the butterfly pavilion. Let's take a look.
Sure.
This is a Morpho butterfly, and as you can see, when it's resting, it folds its wings up, and you can see the pattern it uses to camouflage. And as you can see, there's some patterns that look like eye spots on it as well to scare off predators. As you can see, when the wings are open, you can see that blue color, and that may be used to scare off predators.
Very cool. Now, before we get on to another specimen, another example, we have a student question, and this one comes from the Winthrop School from Michael. And Michael wants to know, what's the difference between a moth and a butterfly?
Well, it's actually the evolutionary relationship between the two. Moths came first, and it was the butterflies that actually evolved from moths. The very first Lepidoptera, which is the name for the order of insects that both belong to, the moths definitely came first.
Very cool. Now, do you have another example that you brought to show us the hiding adaptation, the camouflage?
Yeah, I want to show you this butterfly here that takes a very different approach than the Morpho. It never tries to stand out. If you look at it closely, you'll see that it looks much like a dead leaf, and as a matter of fact, it's called the dead leaf butterfly.
If I saw that in a forest, I would definitely have to look twice to make sure that it was not a dead leaf. Now, we have a fun poll for our viewers to participate in again, and we have a poll to test your ability to tell the difference between the dead leaf butterfly and leaves. So take a look at the image on your screen and tell us how many of these are butterflies. Take a moment to think about it and put your response in the window that appears to the right of your video. So Eric and I are watching your results coming in, and we're kind of split. We have answers all over the place, but the majority of our viewers, 56% of you, think that there are 4 butterflies. So let's take a look at that answer key, and Eric, help us understand which are...
They would be right then if they said there are 4 butterflies there. Only 2 of the examples are indeed dead leaves.
That is an incredible adaptation. Now, what is that adaptation called when a butterfly is mimicking something like a leaf instead of another butterfly?
That's a special kind of mimicry known as mimesis, when a butterfly or other animal mimics something entirely different than itself.
Now, Eric, you've shown us a lot of great examples, but this diversity of colors and patterns makes me wonder if butterflies are able to recognize these colors and patterns themselves.
Well, as a matter of fact, they are. And these butterflies right here, which are known as heliconius, or long-winged butterflies, illustrate this point very well. It's a good study in species recognition, as a matter of fact. You'll notice that all of these butterflies are approximately the same size and shape, but they differ greatly in the color patterns that are on their wings.
And so why is it important that butterflies recognize each other?
Well, you have to mate with a member of your own species in order to successfully reproduce. And this is one of the ways that these butterflies are able to do that. There are other adaptations they have that facilitate that as well through chemical pheromones that the female releases and attracts the male. But visual cues like the wing pattern play an important role in that.
Thank you for all of your awesome questions. Keep them coming. Eric is going to be back with us in about 10 minutes to answer more of your questions about butterflies and their life histories. But for now, we are going to go to our next expert, Juan Pablo Hurtado, who is the microscopy educator here at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. And we see some beautiful images, including a blue morpho there on your screen now. We're going to talk with Juan Pablo to learn a little bit about how butterflies are producing this color in the first place. So thank you, Juan Pablo, for being here today with us.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to remind our viewers to keep your questions coming. We'll try to get to as many as we can. And Juan Pablo will actually take your questions in Spanish as well if you feel more comfortable submitting them that way. So, Juan Pablo, before we learn about how butterflies are producing some of these brilliant colors, it would be helpful for you to help us understand how color is produced in the first place, which is typically pigments.
Absolutely, yes. So basically, most things in nature, animals, plants, even our daily lives, have colors due to pigments. So pigments are chemical compounds that are inside the animals or the things that we have. And what those chemical compounds do is they absorb different wavelengths of light. So as you know, light is composed by all colors. Every color has a specific wavelength. So this chemical can absorb different wavelengths. However, the ones that are not being absorbed, they reflect them. And that's how we get the perception of color.
So to look at my shirt is absorbing all wavelengths of color except orange, which is bouncing off of my shirt.
There you go, yes.
Now, butterflies. Do butterflies have pigments, or is there something else at work here?
Well, many species of butterflies, I will say the majority of them, they have pigments on their wings. However, there are a couple families of butterflies that they use color in a different way.
And you, as a microscopy educator here at the museum, you take a really close look to figure this out. So where do we start?
All right. So back here we have two different microscopes. We have an electron microscope and a light microscope. So first we're going to take a look at this one. So we have the beautiful Morpho and this light microscope. So we're going to get a little bit closer to it.
So this is the blue Morpho that Eric helped us understand a little bit more about, with the drab underside of the wing and the bright blue on the inside. So
exactly right.
What level of magnification are you looking at its wing right now?
So right now we are 15x.
So 15 times, and that's really, really beautiful. What are all of those structures?
That's a very good question. Why don't we make it to our viewers?
I think that's an excellent idea. Viewers, we have another opportunity for you to participate in a live poll with us. Take a look at the butterfly wing under the microscope and tell us the texture on this blue Morpho butterfly wing is tiny feathers, protective scales, insulating tiles, or colored beads. Take a moment to think about it and put your answer in the window that appears to the right of your video screen. Juan Pablo and I are looking at the results coming in live, and 100% of our viewers say that they are scales. How did they do?
Well, they are 100% right.
So these are tiny scales covering the butterfly wings.
Yes. So for example, if you have ever touched a butterfly, you get this kind of dust in your fingers. That's actually the scales that you took off.
And butterflies are part of a group called Lepidoptera, which actually means scaled wings.
There you go, yes.
All right, so is this light microscope giving you enough magnification to understand how the color is actually produced?
Well, no. Light microscopes, by physics, they have a specific limits. So if we want to see a better image about the very small structure of these scales, we have to use a different microscope, and that will be a scanning electron microscope, for example, the one that we have here.
So this one here, this is not a computer sitting next to us. This is a scanning electron microscope.
Yes, you're right. It's confused by a computer, but it's actually a full-fledged scanning electron microscope.
Wow, and so you have a tabletop scanning electron microscope here, but you have another microscope here at the museum that you use to look even closer.
Definitely. So for example, this small one can reach 30,000 times. However, the big one that you are looking at right now, it can reach actually 1.5 million times magnification.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's start with this electron microscope. Tell us, you said that this one can reach 30,000 times magnification. How close is that?
Yes, for example, let's take a look here. So we have the microscope, and I'm going to go increasing the magnification here.
So this is, again, the blue Morpho butterfly wing.
It's exactly the same species of butterfly, so we're going to take a look at
wow.
a higher magnification, so you can see how we get closer and closer and closer and closer to the sample. And if we reach around 15,000 times, I can just focus a little bit, and then we can see the actual structure of those scales at that magnification.
Wow, that is simply incredible. So much detail is revealed when you're able to look at it 15,000 times closer than if you were to look at it without any magnification.
Yes. So for example, we have SEM images at 50,000 times, and it's very important to understand how small is this scale, right? So if we take a look at this image that we have, the magnification is also 15,000 times, and you can see the scale bar to the right, there's 1 micron. So to have an idea how small 1 micron is, we can use human hair. So 1 human hair will be between 80 to 100 microns. So that means that this structure will be at least 80 to 100 times smaller than the width of 1 human hair.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, if you were to look even closer, you said in that other setup with a scanning electron microscope, you can look at 1.5 million times. I mean, how close is that? Help us understand.
Well, in terms of resolution, we can reach the nanometer scale. For example, in this image, we can see an image at 50,000 magnification, and the scale bar now is in nanometers, 500 nanometers. So it's very important to understand how small is this scale, and to understand that, I use this ball. Okay, so this ball is very important for me. So let's imagine that you have 1 single nanometer, okay? So if you compare that nanometer to this ball, will be like comparing this ball to the planet Earth.
Oh my goodness, that's hard to even wrap my head around. That is incredible. And this level of magnification is necessary to understand microstructures that may play a role in butterfly coloration?
Yes, exactly right.
And I know that you have a demonstration for us to help us understand a little bit more visually how these structures work.
Sure. So we have the butterfly here, and something that we can do is actually reveal the pigment color on this butterfly.
So before you do that, we have another poll for our students, which seems a little bit like a trick question. Viewers, we have another poll for you to participate in before Juan Pablo does his demonstration, and we want to ask you, what color is the blue Morpho butterfly? It's the butterfly that is under magnification right now. Is it blue, brown, green, or purple? And while you're thinking about that, Juan Pablo, why don't you lead us through your demo?
Of course. So here we can see the wing under the light microscope. So I'm going to put 1 drop of alcohol on top of it.
So this is simple rubbing alcohol. Wow. Oh my goodness, so what was brilliantly blue and iridescent is now quite brown.
Yes. So what happens is the alcohol is covering the structure on top of the scales, and these structures are the one responsible for the color. So by covering them, we can get rid of the blue and only show the actual pigment colors inside the butterfly.
So we see our poll again here. What color is the blue Morpho butterfly? Is it fair to say that the blue Morpho butterfly is both brown and blue?
I would say it is, yes. Even though we see it blue, it's due to the specific structure, but the pigments, once revealed, they show this brown color.
Now it's hard to look away at this microscope image because as this alcohol is drying, I can actually see the color, that blue color coming back. I was worried for a moment that it would stay brown. What's happening?
You don't have to. So again, the alcohol only covers the structure. However, the alcohol is very light, so it's going to evaporate very quickly, and as it does, the structure is free again to intervene with the light, and we can see the blue coming back.
And as it's evaporating, I even see hints of green, and this all has to do with the structure, not actually the pigment that
Exactly
the butterfly
right,
has.
yes.
Wow, that is really incredible. So, are butterflies the only kinds of animals that have this kind of structural color, or are there other animals that have it?
Actually, there are many animals that have this type of coloration. So even though it's not it's not a very popular way to produce color, we have other examples like peacock feathers, dragonflies, blue jays, and other butterflies.
Now, there's a common theme there. They're all blue.
Yes.
What's up with that?
Well, it's very interesting because in nature there is actually only one species that can produce blue pigments. That's another butterfly. So every blue that you see in nature from animals or plants, they're actually made by a structural color.
Wow, that's really incredible. So we have a student question right now, but it comes in by video. So
All right.
Let's have a look.
Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I was wondering, do different butterflies have different wing structures?
Well, that's a very good question. We can tell that being in the same family, butterfly scales are relatively similar. However, once you see it on detail, like in a scanning electron microscope, you can discover their differences. So if we take a look, for example, at a different butterfly that we have is a emerald green butterfly. So this butterfly lives in Asia, and it produces color by structure. However, the structure is completely different from the blue morpho. If you see on the images, we have the same ridges. Those ridges led to these very different looking balls of what we had before. And those balls are the ones that actually produce, reflect blue on the sides and yellow at the center. So by mixing those two, we have gray.
Now, that's so fascinating. And if we take a step back to the blue morpho, can you help us understand, I know you have a couple images to help us understand how exactly this light is entering into the nanostructure of these scales to produce the blue?
Absolutely, yes. So if we get the image, we can see how, first you have to remember the light is composed by all colors. Every color has a specific wavelength. Okay, so when something is being shined on, you are getting all the colors on top. However, the structure of the blue morpho butterfly is designed to reflect only blue light back. Okay, so if we see the actual SEM picture, you can see this what we call Christmas tree structure, where you see layers and space between the layers. And with a diagram of that, we can see that the light coming in, some of the wavelengths are going to bounce from the top, some of them are going to bounce from the bottom of the layer. However, only blue color can bounce on the same face. If you see the right side, is what is bouncing on the same face. So that means that the wavelength is getting added up. So that means that the output is increased. However, every other color is bouncing out of phase. So that means that when they meet each other, they're going to cancel out.
And so that's how we get our blue color, because those wavelengths are actually being amplified together to produce that brilliant blue.
Exactly.
Now, do you always get that iridescent color with structural color?
Yes, so iridescent color is basically a property of structural color. Structural color depends on the angle of the light is going into the sample, so that's why every time that you see these iridescent samples, you can see different colors or different shines when you move them around, something that doesn't happen with pigments.
All right, we're going to learn a little bit more about that in a moment, but we have a lot of questions, so we're going to try to get to a couple of them.
All right.
This one comes from Jillian. She wants to know, how did the butterfly get its name?
Wow.
So the blue morpho butterfly.
That's a very good question. So blue, definitely due to the color, and morpho is based on the family of this butterfly. So morpho is a family of butterflies, and all these different species inside that family share this kind of structure.
All right. And this question, another butterfly question, but it's from Front Royal Homeschool. Does the flash coloration blind the predator?
All right, yes. So that's one of the objectives of this coloration. In the case of the blue Morpho butterfly, this can confuse the predators, and also is a signal to other butterflies so they can find each other in the rainforest.
So Jacob asks, our questions are coming in so quickly, that can the butterfly change its color? So is the structure a little bit different? Can it be different on the same butterfly?
That's a very good question. If we don't change the optical properties, if we don't change the structure, the color's always going to be the same. So we can confuse that with sometimes it sees a little bit darker or lighter blue, but this is only as a consequence of the angle of the light. But actually the butterfly cannot change that color as it desires.
And Jay Lasky wants to know, how big is each individual scale?
Oh, that's a very good question. So if I'm not wrong, every individual scale is around 100 microns wide.
Wow.
So that will be one hair.
One hair.
Yes.
Question from the Curious Lab, people who are watching here on site at the Smithsonian. Why is it important to study butterflies and insects?
Oh, that's a very good question. So by looking at this, for example, we found very interesting properties that we didn't know about before, like this structure, how it produces the color. That can lead to many other discoveries and applications of this. So right now, this butterfly is being used for many scientists and engineers to try to develop new materials, for example.
And here at the Natural History Museum, you are collaborating with many scientists across the museum to help do microscopy work to understand different properties and structures. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. So with the powerful microscope that we have now, we have a lot of scientists that are trying to see new samples. So we have 150 million different specimens in the museum. So that's a lot of things that you can take a look at. So we're having a great time with them.
And even just looking at the blue Morpho example that you shared with us in those images of the green butterfly, you can see how they're radically different, even though they're both butterflies.
Exactly. They look kind of the same except for the color. They are butterflies. But once you get into the detail, you can see the structure of these high magnifications. You can see how the physics that they use, how the structure that they use are completely different.
Thank you so much for helping us see the blue Morpho up close and learn a little bit about its structural color. We're going to get to more of these student questions, but before we do, I want to ask Eric to come back to the set. Eric, again, if you're just joining us, is our Butterfly Pavilion Manager here at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Juan Pablo. It's been a pleasure learning a little bit more about butterfly coloration here with you today.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you.
And I should mention to our viewers that Juan Pablo and Eric work here in the Museum of Natural History. So if you're ever visiting us here, you'll have to check out the Butterfly Pavilion where Eric works, and Curious where Juan Pablo and scanning electron microscope activities are here for you to explore. And two, you can check out our Curious website at curious.si.edu to get more resources about butterfly coloration. And that is the same place where this program will be archived later this evening. That's it for our show today and for this school year, but Science How will be back next school year. We will be starting off the season on September 27th when we feature Kay Berensmeyer, a paleontologist who will talk to us about fossilization. We hope to see you then. But for now, have a great summer, and we'll see you next time on Smithsonian Science How.